sure appreciate the opportunity to be able to spend a little time with fellow therapists and kind of talking a little bit about what it takes to retain physical therapists in today's age. It's a little bit of a challenge, I find. I don't know if it's our latest generation or what is. When I got out of physical therapy school, and this will date me just a bit, but went to Emory University and graduated back in 2000. My intention, I think my mindset coming out was, boy, I'm probably going to get in with a company. I'm going to stay in that company, and perhaps that's going to be my whole career. I'm not sure. Whereas today, in today's age, when I talk to physical therapists within our group, a lot of the initial conversation is that, yeah, I got into physical therapy to be able to have a solid career, but perhaps even more to be able to bounce around, see the United States, travel from one company to the next. It's a little bit of a different mindset. And so that makes it, I think, a little bit harder for employers to be able to talk a little bit about building a physical therapy clinic, a physical therapy company, if we can't retain folks and really build them. So a little bit of background on me, and I think this will give people out there just maybe a little insight on why I think the way I do. But I graduated and wanted to move out west, back closer to family after being in Atlanta for about 3 years in graduate school. And so at the time, Clinton had just balanced the budget. And in that came some massive changes, both to skilled nursing, somewhat to home health, but really in the skilled nursing arena. And so I remember I sent out, boy, it had to be about, this was before the age of the internet being very prolific, I would say. So I sent out my resumes with a header letter to probably 400 clinics in the Northwest. That's where I wanted to be. So I was kind of honing in on where's that one company that I wanted to be able to spend my career with. And as I sent all those out, I didn't get, I think, 2-3 responses. So then I called them all. And again, this kind of dates me. This is not the way we would follow up in today's age, but called them all. And I was able to set up at 400 prospects. At that time, I think I set up, I think it was 7 total interviews. And took a flight out, went and met them all, narrowed it down, and set in Montana with my first job. And as I approached that first job, recognized that within the first 2 days of being on site, that there was actually not a caseload there. And so I went back after I bounced to my second job and actually found something that was going to be more meaningful long-term. I've analyzed how is it that they first got me there, recruited me there, and what is it that they weren't able to provide for me to keep me there. And I think in this situation it was pretty easy, because first and foremost, in that recruitment stage, the gal that was recruiting me, she was really good at explaining how she could provide a wonderful mentorship opportunity. And I don't know if that's what you guys really hear a lot of when you're recruiting physical therapists, is that I'm looking for education, I'm looking for growth, I'm looking for mentorship. And that's what I was looking for at the time as well. And so she was a board certified hand therapist. And I thought for sure that connecting up with somebody that needed me and I needed them in a mutual exchange of both ideas as well as wage was what was going to keep me with one company forever. And unfortunately, I bounced within just 3 or 4 months. And anyway, but those original intentions, I believe, are what physical therapists are still looking for today. We're looking for a company that's going to help me as a new, maybe I'm a new grad or maybe I'm a few years out, but I'm looking for somewhere I can learn and grow, somewhere somebody that's going to push me, somebody that's going to help me develop as a practitioner, both clinically and professionally. And I would say at least 80–90% of the therapists that I run into, they want to actually be pushed pretty hard in these areas. And so what we've done as a physical therapy group is to be able to focus on some of these both recruitment opportunities as well as retention opportunities that by comparison and other experiences that we've not received in growing a mentorship program and a growth and development program with Superior Physical Therapy here in Idaho that I would love to share today. We're not perfect at by any means, but that I think really helps to grow longevity in a situation and in a time period with physical therapy where perhaps physical therapists and staff PTs are looking to jump sometimes before they're willing to stay and to grow. So opening that up for just a few minutes, let me back up and just say we've been able to grow in the boot of Idaho, in the toe of the boot of Idaho, to about 4 clinics now, and we have 10 PTs. And in being able to do that, it was just one step after another, but it all came back to both in the recruitment and the retention of being able to understand what the PT wants and be able to help them professionally grow. So before I get into kind of our program, I'd love to reach out to some of the people that have jumped in here and ask if you think back to what you were looking for in that new job. Angie, Graham, Will, everybody else here, jump on in. What would be the number one things, if you can kind of wind back that clock just a little bit, what were you looking for? And was it given to you in your first job?
I'll jump in. Yeah, back in 2002, when there were no jobs, I was just looking, for anything at all that would just pay me money. It was, kind of like hiring if they have a pulse kind of a thing. I just took the first job I could find, and that's why I moved to Arizona. That's the real reason why I moved out here, because there were no jobs. But yeah, it didn't give me what I needed. I didn't get the mentoring I needed. It was really rough. I think what you said about mentoring is spot on.
Angie, what were you looking for?
Hey guys. Mentoring, I think, hit the nail right on the head. I was blessed that I found a practice right out of PT school that was it was a great fit. And the only reason why I did leave was to begin my own practice. So, my idea from the beginning was to learn everything I could possibly learn about being a practice owner and then go do it myself. So I have to say that I'm very grateful for my first experience.
Very good. Anybody else want to chime in on this? It sounds like it's the thing we're hearing.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I graduated around the same time everybody else did, where there were no jobs, with the Balanced Budget Act and whatnot, and got my first job at a large rehab hospital in the middle of Manhattan. That was an unbelievable experience. And they had about 90 therapists and rotated every 6 months to a new, version of PT, whether it be acute or subacute or outpatient. So, and the thing that didn't keep me there was the commute was obscene. It was the better part of 2 hours each direction. So, but just to add on to what you were saying, it was the mentorship and mentoring that kept me there for as long as I did stay.
Perfect. We have looked back and trying to create here at Superior Physical Therapy a mentorship program for retention, and have kind of gone in several directions since then, because I think my first experience maybe a little bit closer to Will's, certainly not what Graham and Angie had by any means. I really struggled when I got up there to Montana. Not only did we not have any patients in this outpatient practice, which they had kind of falsified when they got me out there, but again, I was looking for what Will was looking for. I needed a paycheck. I needed somewhere to be. And the second thing that was promised to me was that with this certified hand therapist, is she was going to spend time with me each week, being able to kind of double up on patients that were more complex hands post-op scenarios, and being able to work with, I think it was Gibson Guitar was in town as a manufacturer, and be able to go on site. Well, I'll tell you, in working there, I never saw the inside of Gibson Guitar. I never had, well, I think there was one patient where we had overlap and spent some time together so that I could learn on a situation of a peripheral nerve injury recovery. And for the most part, I was kind of just on my own. And in thinking back on this scenario and building a practice, a private practice over the last 15, 16 years, unfortunately, I didn't learn from what I didn't like as well, and tended to fall in the first few years to the same exact situation that I had. So I was kind of on my own. I was disappointed with the mentorship, and I was looking for someone that would kind of take me under their wing. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't think that I had any misconception that I wasn't going to be doing my own volume, my own patient care, I was going to have to earn my keep. But somewhere along the way, whether it would be just even a half hour a week, an hour a week, I wanted somebody to give me some exposure and challenge me clinically. Well, I think when we all got out of school, we were done with these rotations, I was used to having a clinical instructor at each one of my rotations in Georgia that spent time criticizing what my thought process was, shooting me down, building me back up again. And I thought that was just part of the normal learning experience once we got out of school, but found that that was not true in my case, and bounced to another job. So in creating this, our step one is to be able to ask the question. And I think we've got some practice owners here, but let me talk about our step one at Superior Physical Therapy as we bring somebody on and do some onboarding. There is about 3 days of training and onboarding outside of their job as physical therapists. They get some experience in each of the divisions within our company. And they'll spend a few hours with Bill. They'll spend a few hours with front desk. They'll spend a few hours getting some exposure. And we've even thought about doing that a little bit longer for a longer period of time, because I think there's a greater experience with the true mentorship that happens when we go beyond just looking at my narrow part of the world as a PT. And then as a part of that onboarding, they're usually given a questionnaire. I don't know if anybody else does this, but it gives them the ability to write down what their 1, 2, and 5-year goals would be as a practitioner, where they want to be. And then also gives them a set of skills that we generally perform in our outpatient clinics, and kind of back on that pain analog scale, on a scale 1 to 10, how comfortable they are with performing each of those skill sets. And that could be cervical spine manipulations. It could be dry needling. It could be, setting up modalities, right? And they're just putting their comfort level in. And we tend to do this really with our new grads, but we'll also do it with all of our experienced hires as well. And then to be able to have them also rate what type of time expectation that they would like to put in being able to get to each of these skill sets to a 10 out of 10, and essentially be able to get to their goals. Does anybody do something similar out there as they're trying to go from an onboarding to a mentorship program with a new hire?
I can always hear myself talk. We did a lot of research. What we did, and what really helped me later, was being a part of a larger company through Empower. So we got to see both sides of how the mentoring process and the training pieces work. And so one of the things I was able to do, I spent some time with the head of mentoring for ATI. I was at CSM a couple years ago, and they did a whole presentation on what they do. And it's really not that complicated. I think the reason we don't develop an organized mentorship program is because we think it's like this big undertaking to take on. But it really can just be simple. It just needs to be organized. And so, like in most cases, the way that it would work is that right out of the gate, there's shadowing, right? Like the first component of a mentorship program was was there was some shadowing out of the gate, and that allowed the company to do some training on what we call the corporate hat, right? Like we won't use corporate, like in my old company, Rise, it was the Rise team hat. It was information you would need to know just to be a member of the company, you know, where to park, like how do you take time off, all those things that people are super worried about in a new job, but especially a new grad. But on the clinical side, that's where the mentorship program is more about shadowing. They start getting their patients built up. Our target was to get them seeing a full patient load quickly, but at a level that would allow a new grad to be able to adapt to the changes. So that would change. So the mentorship program was for 10 months. The first section of it was for them to get up to training within 2 months, or full caseload within 2 months, which was sometimes shorter, sometimes longer, depending on the individual and the needs. And then they were assigned a mentor. And that mentor didn't always have to be someone on site, but the mentor's main responsibility was to meet with this person, sometimes telephonically, but for an hour at the beginning every week after the shadowing had occurred and they started seeing new patients. So I'm talking a lot, but real quick, the way that we looked at it, because I can get into a lot of details around this, is that we wanted to take someone from never being a member of our company up through the ranks clinically to being a full therapist producing great results. So they would shadow, then they would tech, then they would be like a physical therapist assistant where they would see visits but not evals. And then we bring the eval piece. The eval piece on the clinical mentoring is the biggest hurdle. So that was the last component we would add in. All the while, the mentor is doing things like giving them articles to review, reviewing patient experiences, and more or less just giving them support. So again, it's not super complicated, but writing it up on a piece of paper, number one, when I went to recruit, was massive. Hey, this is our program. Oh, you guys must have a great program. And then during the actual program, it turned into something very special.
I think that's really encapsulates what we've tried to do. We go all the way to a 12-month cycle, so it's just a little bit longer. But we really do want to see them seeing patients first one-on-one, and then being able to expand from there and be able to bring a PTA onto their team. And we need to see that happen within the first quarter. So some similarities there. And essentially, as we set up those goals and set up a mentor with them, we ask them to meet with their mentor for 30 to 60 minutes each week and be able to rate on a monthly basis their progress towards their overall goals, as well as what clinically and their comfort level with each of the job objectives that we came up with that they initially rated. And then at the end of that 90-day period, we kind of have another sit down again, where we rate how they're going, if they were able to achieve a team level, if they were able to see the amount of patients within 90 days that we were expecting them to be able to see at a comfortable level, and had even chart reviews that are going on with their mentor on how they're achieving what they're doing. Now, that was kind of our nuts and bolts of a mentorship program. And in achieving that, we recognize that we scratched the surface a little bit on bringing somebody in and helping them to achieve the first goal that we set with them, which was to make them a comfortable, productive, and exceptional therapist. And that could happen within 90 days with certain individuals. I think Will alluded to some were a little bit slower. That doesn't necessarily mean that they don't fit. It just means we need to do a little more work. But the next problem that we found was that was kind of our minimum expectation. And actually, that was their minimum expectation too. And so we went back to those goals again in this process of what were their 1, 2, and 5-year goals of what they wanted to achieve, and found that the mentorship program was answering questions and goals that they had in the first year, but didn't extend beyond that very much at all. And so what we ended up doing as a group is we sat down and kind of created a little bit of a think tank and said, great, we've got a good onboarding process. People understand billing to front desk to what I need to do as a therapist. We've got what we consider to be a good mentorship program, but we were missing the dream of what they wanted to be professionally yeah, at work. And then the secondary dream, which probably is somewhat of the primary, of what I want to be outside of work as well. We really feel like that within our company, within our culture, there's two dreams that have to be achieved. What happens at work and what happens outside of work. And that work can facilitate that. Who we are at work is really who we are in our lives. Many times we identify ourselves as, I am Bart McDonald, I'm a physical therapist. But there's so much more depth. I'm also a husband and a father. I've got 3 kids. I actually, 7 months ago, have, for the first time in my life, a grandson. Love spending time with that grandson. So I think each one of us could kind of go through a level of what we are outside of work. And then even globally, what am I doing? What are some of those goals? What am I doing to improve the world and my profession? And that kind of comes back into that. We introduced in our onboarding process and in our mentorship, the culture, some of the culture words that we use, some of the things of who we are as a company, but we were missing beyond that 1 year point. And so we went back to the drawing board again and said, how do we accomplish the dream of who each one of us wants to be professionally? And then who do we want to be for life? Who do we want to be outside of work? And that was a little bit harder. One of the things that we got feedback, and this was a lot of survey internally from our staff, is they would say that they felt very, very comfortable with their day-to-day routine, day-to-day activities as physical therapists, but just didn't feel like they were growing enough. Yet, when we would ask them in the same survey how much time they wanted to spend on their own, reading, learning, seeking professional development outside of their normal 40-hour work week, Angie, what was their response, do you think?
I was just nodding. I'm guessing that they really didn't want to spend much time outside of their 40-hour work week.
Such a tough conundrum.
Man.
Yeah. And just to let you know, I don't know if everybody else is this way, but all of our physical therapists are salaried. And so it used to be, and I don't know if anybody else kind of feels the same way, but it used to be if I was salaried as an individual that I may work somewhere around 40 to 45 hours a week. That would be kind of a normal salary position. And some of the expectations from perhaps this younger generation is that salary would be 37 to 40.5 hours per week. So there's just a little bit of a different viewpoint on that. But I think you hit the nail on the head there, Angie. I want to, as a physical therapist per se, working at Superior Physical Therapy, I want to be pushed. I want to learn, I want to grow, I want to be able to set my dreams professionally here and my dreams out there in the world here, and I want to be able to achieve those dreams, and I want to be able to do it within my 40-hour work week. And so, honestly, that's been our struggle in professional development, that we took back and said, look, if we want to retain physical therapists, we want to build and retain quality physical therapists that are the best professionals that we can find anywhere in the country, hands down. We've got to be able to challenge our staff more to learn and to grow professionally, and yet there was a little bit of a barrier there. One of the things that we found is that we kind of had to take a little bit of a leap of faith. We recognized that we weren't going to be able to have this happen financially in a 40-hour work week if we were to carve out a bunch of the production time and give it away to a kumbaya powwow. We were all going to read JOSPT in a round robin reading session. That probably wasn't going to achieve what we wanted, nor was it going to be financially acceptable. And so we took what we've gone into with HODS, with hands-on diagnostics, with both the EMG and ultrasound, and tried to expand it to all practitioners that wanted to join with us in this kind of learning crusade. And first, Do you know how many takers we were able to get? None. It was me by myself. And so and again, what do you think the barrier was? It was the night study, right? And so we took a little bit of a step back, took the easier of the two components of learning, which for learning and professional development, knowing that that's really what our gut told us, and really what all of our staff was telling us on paper that they wanted, we needed to help them achieve. And even though the feedback is that they didn't want to spend more time in achieving it, we felt like they would. That if we put forth our best foot forward in effort, that they would put theirs, and there was going to be a good give and take and a mutual exchange that would get us all to where we wanted to be. And so we invested a lot. We explained what the investment was on ultrasound, both in equipment and education. And we ended up saying, hey, we'll carve out 1 hour a week for case conference for all of us to discuss our cases together. If you guys will take 2 hours of your work week outside of your normal 40 and learn and grow just like you did when you were in school, but probably 1/10 of the amount of time that you used to spend. And I didn't really think that we were going to get the response that we did, but we got a phenomenal, favorable response. Once we invested highly, and granted, this is not you've got $1,500 a year for your Con Ed, you've got thousands of dollars towards Con Ed, and you're putting in time, we're putting in time. Now we have, let's see, we've got 5 practitioners, 6 that are all doing ultrasound and being successful in it, and working the sonogram into their plan of care. It gives them the ability to be a much greater depth. In fact, what I would consider to be the best orthopedic physical therapists available in the United States, hands down. And their outcomes and results are so much better. We have a slogan that runs around at each one of our practices, which is "Don't treat blind." We need to make sure that we understand through diagnostics each of the components to the plan of care, so that we can put and create an optimum plan of care for each of the patients that come through our door and have better outcomes. And that has been a turning point in achieving the dream. So we expanded that not only to the diagnostics piece, but also through we jumped on to evidence in motion and opened up the OCS training course. Have put out there SCS, but everybody's been jumping on the OCS, and had that also as a part of their training. And so most of our therapists have jumped in. If we went back to them setting up their 1, 2, and 5-year goals, somewhere in that 5-year goal came some type of specialty almost across the board. And we essentially then created platforms for them to achieve that, but also wrote down and created a contract for each of those education platforms, whether it be OCS or ultrasound or ECS, and how they were going to do that and what that meant on a monthly basis from their commitment, from our commitment, and also then down to a weekly basis. Helped them create and see the budget on how that was going to be created and achieved, and went from just almost a complaint that we were stopping from their professional growth and development at the end of onboarding and mentorship that only lasted a year, and now created a stepwise professional development, and then even went further to, hey, if you want to go into leadership and leadership training, we can also help you achieve those dreams. And what it would mean to become even a clinic director or an owner in a clinic. So that's kind of the direction that we took. And at the end of that, I don't know if anybody else has taken this type of investment, but we felt like we had achieved really a level of clinical care and professional development that I had never seen before. Thousands of dollars, multiple directions from specialty that all fit within our culture as well as our clinical values, and that none of this was very I guess there was no dead ends. It was all also profitable financially, and I think that's where the balance kind of truly came in. And then we found we still had dropout after all of this investment. And so just brainstorming, we've got OCS, ECS, RMSK, everything on the table. We've got the ability to grow into clinic director and leadership. We've got the ability to grow into even ownership into the practice. And we still then were seeing some of the therapists that joined with us after 1 to 2 years leave our practice. So from a group here, there was one more dream that we had to achieve and be able to write down and objectify there. But why is it, before we get to that overall world dream or life dream, what else are we missing in do you think that I was missing in my overall vision of the barriers that our new grads have coming out of school? Number one barrier that they all face is money. Yeah, student loans. And we recognized after everything that we were doing to invest in these therapists that we had missed the mark just slightly. We were putting thousands of dollars into education, whether it be the RMSK, the OCS, the ECS, and 1 to 2 years in, we were having therapists leave our company and not necessarily go to another outpatient orthopedic company. Where were they going, guys, based on your market?
I'm guessing health. That's where they would go here.
Home health. And why? What's the pay differential from what you're seeing, Angie?
I mean, I have therapists in our area that were making 6 figures doing home health and working like, I don't know if this is true, but they'd say, oh, I see 5-6 patients a day and I'm pulling in 6 figures a year. I can't compete with that.
Yeah, it's very difficult because frankly, home health is an industry. They're making more money than we are. That's especially if we are treating legally within the guidelines that we have from Medicare, Medicaid, CMS. So absolutely, we just don't have the ability always to compete financially on that realm. But I think that we actually can. And we sat down. This was probably now phase 3 of a think tank in our professional development track, is what we now call that. It started as, what do we need to do from onboarding, to what do we need to do for mentorship, to now what do we need to do for professional development, to then how does this all get us to really retain, and how do we answer the question of student loans? So what we ended up doing here, and we shared this about a year and a half ago as an idea that has really come to fruition, is we created a little bit of a student loan repayment program. Now, the first thing is, as a practice owner that should come up in, great, where are you going to get the money for that? And so what we did is that we recognized that some of our providers that were doing quite well with physical therapy and their physical therapy volume, legally with government and everything, we follow the rules. They were also doing quite well with musculoskeletal ultrasound. And some of our best orthopedic practitioners are really good at ultrasound. And the better they are at ultrasound, the more money they make at ultrasound, the more often they use that tool. And because of its reimbursement, we took a fairly high percentage of that reimbursement and gave it back to them. Based on certain volumes, as they were able to achieve certain goals on a monthly basis, we essentially paid them a lot more in a bonus that came back. And so we incentivized them to legally and ethically make the money It saves their patients money by far by reducing the amount of MRIs, CTs, et cetera, that have to be done to properly diagnose. Actually gets their patients to the end of the road faster. So it saves the patient money, and in an ethical way, we were able to create somewhat of a loan reimbursement program for these therapists that are just drowning in debt. And so that was kind of the last piece to our mentorship / professional development stepping stone to get therapists where we felt they needed to be, and be able to compete against the home health market in an aggressive way. We did explore some ways of trying to do that in a tax advantage type scenario, and found that what our accountants were kind of telling us, that if you had a therapist that was working for you before going to physical therapy school and set up some type of a loan reimbursement program, that could be done in a tax benefit, but everything else just had to be taxed. That was kind of our end result of a very, very long conversation with a couple of accountants and an attorney. But on the backside of that, we still now have therapists that have 6 figures in student debt that have the ability, through combining physical therapy, professional development through ultrasound or EMG, to take and be able to make more money. If we add the leadership component, now we're competing with what you're talking about, Angie, with home health. They can make 6 figures. They can put that in we try to actually sit down and connect them up with a financial advisor that helps them get out of debt and make that a priority, because they're still kind of drowning in it.
Bart, can I say something for a second here?
You bet.
Well, first, thank you so much for all of the knowledge that you talked about today. And what I would like to share that I took from it is that, you know, a lot of the things, as you're talking about the mentorship program and the student loan reduction programs, many of these things we are doing in our practice, but we don't call them this. And I think this is the problem. This is the disconnect, the lack of communication. We do the shadowing, we do the doc, we're doing these things, but we don't say, this is your mentor, this is your mentorship opportunity. It's not laid out and completely clear to them. So no wonder why they're probably missing, we're missing the boat to them. We're not communicating it effectively, although we can do a much better job in some of the suggestions that you had. But also the incentive program. A huge light bulb went off. I do incentivize my therapists for different, abundant opportunities that they're bringing to the table. But I call it an incentive. I just call it an incentive. I don't call it their student loan payback reimbursement plan. I don't put them with a financial advisor. So by taking that next step is what you've taught me today. I can turn something that I'm pretty much already doing, it doesn't take that much effort, but would make a world of difference, because now I'm marketing it as having a program or having, the ability. I offer student loan, repay or however we want to talk about that. So thank you so much for the ideas and the things that you've shared today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. One of the additional, just talking about putting things down concretely, about 2 years ago, one of our therapists said, "Hey, Bart, that's great that you've got this mentorship program. What's the curriculum?" And we went, "What do you mean, what is the curriculum? It's whatever you want it to be." And they went, no. What is the curriculum? And that's what actually sent us towards Evidence in Motion and saying, we want all of our therapists within 5 years, if it's on their goal, if it's on their dream list, to be OCS. We don't think that's a very difficult thing to achieve in the overall. I mean, it's a hard test. It's a great thing to do. But by doing that, it gave us a very concrete curriculum to put with the mentorship. And it gave them the ability to see, well, if I'm going to exchange and come in at 7 a.m. every Friday morning to review the curriculum with my peers in preparation for this exam, and I'm not being paid from that hour from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. before I start seeing patients, I want to see it concrete. And I think it's done a lot for us. So I appreciate you pointing that out, because I feel like before this, we were kind of flying by the seat of our pants, looking for the next barrier it was in keeping people. And then it was even not until later that we said, well, we got to write all this down. We got to have a checkbox checklist. We got to have something. And I think Will alluded to at the beginning is that then becomes the way you recruit. The way you recruit becomes the way that you onboard. The way that you onboard and mentor and do professional development is the way you become the therapists that we are. But it really does have to be as concrete. And when we're even talking about it now, I'm sitting there going, oh, I'm thinking about a therapist right now in our curriculum that picked up and said he wanted to do OCS, and he started going to class, but I didn't have him sign the sheet yet. He's got to sign the sheet. Why is the sheet so important? It's just going in a file. Well, not really. It's making it concrete. We really do like talking about loan repayment in that scenario, from the inception of recruitment all the way through. And every once in a while, I had a therapist just the other day that said, Bart, I've paid off all my student loans. Are you not gonna pay me this incentive bonus anymore for ultrasounds? I'm like, oh, heck yes. Yeah, put about what's your next debt? I mean, you don't have to tell me, but what's the next thing you'd like to pay down so you could be more financially independent? And had a little bit of a conversation that way. So anyway, it becomes a great stepping stone. The last thing, though, I kind of wanted to end off on was the life dream. The phase 3, whether it be OCS, ECS, RMSK, that we've implemented, and in fact, it was just the past 2 weeks that we've started to put this down into terms, is we're asking everybody that goes through this professional development with us to give back. It is not enough. It's not enough I paid off my student loans because I made an extra $10,000 a year. I paid off now some of my house because I did more than that. I was a better practitioner. I was a better therapist. I got my OCS. It's not enough. Our expectation is for them then to write down what their plan is, how they're going to teach at Idaho State University on the side, some introductory classes to ultrasound, how they're going to go and bring mentorship underneath them for the new hires that we have, and have them create what we call really the give back professional development. Without that, it dead ends. They don't realize where they got to at the end of the road and what they were able to achieve, and it's just not appreciated. Plus, the momentum that is caused by doing this much professional development then becomes stagnant. So it's the give back phase. And so really, we are just starting to get to the tip of the iceberg. Andy Good, one of our therapists, did a phenomenal job. He and I teamed up for ISU during COVID to do a 3-hour lecture on introduction to musculoskeletal ultrasound in physical therapy. We just did that. It was mid-COVID. It was all on Zoom. I thought it was going to be a total flop, honestly, because I wasn't used to Zoom. And we learned a lot, not only about that platform, but how to engage with students that way. They recorded it. We put it onto our website. Anyway, it was phenomenal. And we started to build that idea of give back in professional development. This is not where we have achieved and we stopped. And then the last part of my presentation really is the life dream. When we talk to our therapists and our leadership and ask them, what do you want? What is it that is in your goal for you, for your family, for, it might be career, it might be outside of your career. What are you looking for out of life? A lot of times there's some intangibles of giving back and being able to serve, and those things become more valued. After they write those down, it integrates more fully into our program. But the other thing is some of the things that they can't achieve very readily that we've started to try to build. Financially, by the time they get out of $150,000 in student loans and have achieved OCS and maybe ECS, RMSK, whatever they went, in our professional development, they also have some other things for their family that they really want. I'd really like a cabin in the woods, right? I'd really like to be able to have some time away with my family. And so just this week, this is kind of breaking new ground for us. As a company, we bought a cabin. I don't know if you can call it a cabin. It sleeps 40, so it's huge. Yeah, it sleeps 40. It's at Bear Lake. I don't know if anybody knows where Bear Lake is, but that's the bottom of the boot, of the toe of the boot. It's a lake that straddles both Idaho and Utah. And so this last week, we invested a huge amount of money into buying this. Our goal was to try to leverage Airbnb to pay the bills, and then to give back and create meaningful achievement of life dreams to our staff and trying to keep them and retain them long term. We know by the time they've managed some hurdles with student loans and trying to get a house paid off, and I got to save for my kids for college, they're just not going to get around to some of those other dreams that they've always had and that they've been able to verbalize to us in a cost-effective way. And so now, if you are the team of the quarter for production, we're going to give you and your team and your families the ability to go down and take the weekend down at the Superior vacation home, the Superior cabin, and do some of those types of things as well. Help them achieve dreams that they couldn't, life dreams that couldn't be achieved any other way. So I hope this was kind of helpful. I really just kind of wanted to talk through today the bumbles, the stumbles, the falls, and kind of how this came along. I'm sure if I would have listened a little bit more at PPS, this would have been outlined a little bit better for me, and I wouldn't. But we kind of had to just learn one step at a time, and I think every organization does that. So hopefully that was helpful for everybody going through. Anything anybody else has got to any questions or anything to add to the coffee talk of the day?
Guys, I'm a layman. You guys know that. I'm a communications marketing person. So what's interesting is I listen in on these conversations, and I think there's nuggets and pieces that help me in what I'm doing and what I'm trying to achieve. There's good life lessons that we talk about in these talks. They're good for really any owner of any business could come into our talks and really benefit from us. James, if you want to jump in.
No, I was waiting for anybody else to chime in. You were great. It's a great point, and Will said it a couple times. I think Andy might have as well. That if you had somebody who didn't know much about business and they jumped on one of these things for a month, and they had Will's segment and Andy on social media or motivation and this thing from Bart, they would get more from from those 4 hours in 1 month than they would have gotten from any faculty member on business in any school they went to, or any mentor maybe. So these are gems, man. These are great. Fully agree. And Bart, I loved your talk, man. It aligns with a lot of what I've done as a senior admin for 20-something years, putting these systems in place. And, I think I love the idea of having it the organization at the beginning so it flows, so when they come in, they see it organized. They see the checklist or the form or the whatever you call that document. They see it, they can touch it. They see it's from day one to day, 365. And that's amazing. That's great. One of the most successful owners I worked with, not far from where you are, is he would spend, I want to say every month or two, he would have as the owner, despite that he had many therapists, he would take FaceTime with that PT, one-on-one, ongoing, because he wanted that FaceTime and he wanted that direct communication. And he would he's aligning his communication with their purposes, his purpose, their purposes, his purpose. And he kept them in alignment. If they were falling out of alignment, he'd adjust something or change, and whatever. But that's amazing that you do that. And anyway, I want to validate that. That was awesome. So thanks for that.
I appreciate being willing to just have everybody jump on in and listen to my story on this. It's definitely a work in progress. And I think part of the love of being a business owner and a practice owner is the personal growth and development that happens as we focus on others. And I think that is probably the biggest key to success in professional development and retention. If we focus on the goals, dreams, and desires of the people that we're just privileged to work with, that are just wonderful human beings, that are phenomenal therapists, have the potential to even be more, and help them unlock their dreams, we will achieve ours. And so I just leave that with you. Appreciate everybody coming.